Welcome to the audio conferencing center. Please enter a conference ID followed by pound. You're now joining the meeting.
agenda of the consent agenda?
All right.
Our kids do.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
I love that enthusiasm. Want to welcome everybody to the State Board of Education meeting for Thursday. What is it, March 24th? March 25th. The day is moving along. The first quarter of the year is almost over. We have several people in the audience today, and if you would, what I would like you to do, if you're comfortable, please stand up and introduce yourself. And if you're not comfortable doing that, that's fine as well. So can we hear from our guests?
Hello, my name is Sherry Hall. I'm actually an educator for the state. I've been in the California schools for 14 years total. I'm here to talk about dyslexia. I own a small touring business. After I left teaching, I started a small business designed to teach students. So,
Thank you for being here. Thank
I'm
you.
sorry, did you say DeKalb County Schools?
yes,
Great, thank you. I couldn't understand.
I'm Tina Engberg. I'm the state leader of Decoding Dyslexia Georgia, which is a parent-led grassroots advocacy organization devoted to helping students in Georgia with dyslexia.
Yeah, I've known Tina for years and her great advocacy, particularly within Cobb County as well. Thank you, Tina.
Hi, I'm Debbie Alexander, Executive Director at CSRA RESA, and I'm just here today representing all RESAs, and again, thank you for your support.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Sam Martique with Nelson Mullins. We work with the Georgia Education Coalition, the Georgia School Counselors Association, the Georgia School Social Workers Association, and also the Career and Technical Education Association.
Terrific. Is Chuck Clay still involved with that Georgia Education
He
Coalition?
is.
All right.
He's probably over in the Capitol right now.
Yeah, no doubt.
Good morning. I'm Stacy Lutz. I'm the Director of Strategic Programs and Evaluations with the Governor's Office of Student Achievement. And I'm talking to you today about assessment audits and Governor's School Leadership Academy.
All right. Thank you very much for being here today. What I would like to do now is turn this over to State Board Member Mr. Mike Long for our invocation and the Pledge of Allegiance.
Good morning, everybody. This is impromptu, so I know that scares most of you half to death. So for inspiration, this would be my inspiration this morning. I'm ready for that to happen. I'm ready for us to have National Mass Burning Day as a holiday. But I will tell you, and there's several Southern people in here, I will let you know, and we as educators and educator support team plant seeds, and we want to water and fertilize those seeds for K through 12, and then we want those seeds to be harvested. So I think it's all relative, that there's a time to plant and there's a time to grow. And that's what we hear. We are here to help the staff. We are here to help the kids of Georgia grow. And I think it's very important that our harvest time is their harvest time. So we need to make sure that we look forward to doing the best we can for the kids of the state of Georgia. And we look forward for that to be a bountiful harvest for them. If y'all would join me in a quick word of prayer, please, or take a moment of silence, whichever you'd like to do. All right. Thank you, Father, for all you do for us. Thank you for this day. We've had plenty of rain in South Georgia, but only you know who needs the most. And Father, we just ask that you put the rain on the crops the seeds that we plant in these kids, and that this board and this group of educators and this group, this Department of Education, continues to fertilize in those seeds and just give them the right way to grow, Father. And we just ask for wisdom, guidance, and direction on that. In Jesus' name, amen.
Thank you. And
I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
You know, speaking on behalf of the board, I know that everyone here shares our sympathies with Megan and Megan Frick and her family. So please keep Megan in your thoughts and prayers. All right, next order of business is public hearings, and we have three separate hearings. So I'm going to call the first one, and if there are no respondents to that hearing, we'll move on to the next one. The first hearing is for State Board Rule 160-3-1-.07. It's on testing programs and student assessment. This hearing is now open. Is there anybody here to speak on this particular item? If not, this hearing is closed. We'll move on to the next hearing. The State Board Rule is 160-4-2 7-.32. It is the student support team. This hearing is now open. Is there anybody? Hello, Tina.
Hey.
I was recently asked about the intent of the proposed rule change for student support team, which is part of the legislation enacted under SB 48. As the state leader of Decoding Dyslexia Georgia, a parent organization which helps the families of students with dyslexia, it is crystal clear. This rule change should bring greater clarity to school leaders regarding their obligations under Senate Bill 48 and the Child Find mandate of IDEA to identify students who demonstrate reading difficulties and may show characteristics of dyslexia or specific learning disability in reading, to get those students help early in their educational career. Children's futures are at stake. As it stands, the proposed rule change is muddled, confusing, and provides schools with no specifics regarding acceptable interventions for students. Which brings me to the FES. It resembles the current data set of identification of students' specific struggles with reading. Almost universally, that identification does not come during the crucial years of K-1-2. That's K-1-2. Mostly it's in 3rd grade to 5th grade. And then it drops off substantially as soon as kids hit middle school. There is a lot of research, and because my clock is ticking, there's a lot of research that is being presented about why it's important to seek out these students early in their career. It helps on 2 fronts. It takes 4 times as long to remediate a student who's in the 4th grade as it does who's one in kindergarten, 1st or 2nd. Earlier intervention is more effective and less expensive. It also helps diminish the Matthew effect, which states that children who do not read well read far fewer words over time than good readers and fall farther behind in knowledge development and thus their education. The tassel is a powerful symbol of graduation, and CLD's research indicates that only 68% of identified dyslexic students will leave high school with a regular diploma. 19% will drop out, and 12% will receive a certificate of completion. For students of color, the statistics are worse. Dyslexics fill our country's prisons, and the Journal of Learning Disabilities reports that dyslexic students have 3 times higher risk of attempting suicide. Identifying children who have dyslexia and other reading difficulties early and in a consistent manner across districts is an issue of equity and opportunity. The proposed state rule has the ability to help districts do this better, but the change needs to be revised into a meaningful, clear document, unambiguous in its design. A child who would be identified and provided intervention in one district shouldn't be left to fall through the cracks in another. I thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you. Tina, if you have those prepared remarks, can you forward those to me?
Absolutely.
Thank you. All right, and I believe we have Sherry Lucas Hall as well. Thank you, Sherry.
Good morning. Addressing dyslexia is something happening nationwide. 43 million functionally illiterate Americans says that we are overdue to address it. But dyslexia is a brain-based struggle, and students need a specific type of instruction to be successful. I've seen a lot of references to intervention as addressed by the proposed rule change, but not a lot that speaks directly to initial instruction that students receive. If we only address intervention, then we are constantly putting a Band-Aid on an issue that should be addressed at its root, instruction. Structured literacy addresses the need of every student, but particularly those that struggle and those with dyslexia. It is instruction that is explicit, systematic, cumulative, and diagnostic. No one is left out of this type of instruction. Smaller numbers of students need intervention with this type of instruction. If we are to truly address the needs of struggling readers and those with dyslexia, we must look at the initial reading instruction that students receive and begin to make changes at that point. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there anybody else here to speak to that state board rule for the student support team?
Yes, sir. Mr. Chair, if you don't mind taking the point of privilege, I'd like to take 2 minutes and 14 seconds of the board's time to run a quick YouTube video on a couple of, I previewed the video last night. It's about our superheroes that are dyslexic. Y'all can go ahead and cue up the video, please.
Do not sell me short. Do not tell me I can't.
I just need you to help me learn to read.
With evidence-based reading instructions.
Evidence-based? Yes, evidence-based.
Evidence-based, as in based on what science tells us about how most children learn to read.
Help me learn to read.
With the science of reading.
And watch me grow my wings.
Watch me fly.
Watch me soar.
Watch me change the world.
Because I can do anything. With my brilliant dyslexic mind.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to thank Dr. Dooley and her team for what they've been doing. Helen and I have a strong constituency in our areas about this very pattern, and I want to make sure we get it right. I just wanted y'all to see that quick video because it's out there, and we need to address it. So, thank you, sir.
All right, thank you. And I know that, we talk about just the importance of literacy among our regular student population, and I'm not suggesting anything about being irregular. I mean, it's just it's an amazing challenge, and we need to boost literacy in every way possible that we can. Thank you. All right, if there's no one else here for this student support team hearing, we'll consider this hearing closed, and then we'll move on now to the final hearing. And I don't have anybody signed up for this, but this hearing is now open for 160-4-2.34 for dual enrollment. Is there anybody to speak on this matter? Hearing none, this hearing is closed. So we'll now get together for the committee of the whole, and I'm first going to call on Budget Committee Chair Jason Downey for his report.
Chairman, we had a budget committee, and all items will be moved to or the consent agenda, with the exception of item 6, which was pulled from the agenda altogether, and items 12, 13, 14, and 15, which will be pulled for a special discussion and a special vote. All other items.
All right, thank you, Mr. Downey. Now I'll call on Rules Committee Chair, Dr. Butch Mosley, for his report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Let me back up just one moment. Does anybody have any questions about Jason's recommendations? Okay, hearing none. Dr. Mosley?
Items 1, 2, 3, and 8 will go to the consent agenda. Items 4 and 5 are up for, and 6 are up for adoption, and 7.
All right. That's consistent with what I recall from Rules Committee yesterday. Any questions?
Did we ask for item number 7 to be pulled for a separate vote?
It is pulled.
It is.
It is pulled. All right. And just to reiterate, from Rules Committee, we have items 1, 2, 3, and 8 on consent, and then we have items 4, 5, 6, and 7 pulled for a separate vote. Okay. Now we'll turn to Dr. Stan Desjardins for the Charter Schools and District Flexibility Committee recommendations.
Mr. Chairman, it's recommended that items 1, 2, 3, and 4 be added to the consent agenda.
Thank you. Are there any questions? All right, hearing none, those will be moved to the consent agenda. It's my understanding, Mr. Long, that we do not have any items for consideration for state schools.
That's correct.
All right, do you have any report or anything to share? Thank you, sir.
Thank you for all your support.
Absolutely. You have items for information. We have minutes, the executive session, other business items, superintendent's report, chair's report. Okay. Tell you what, we're going to take a quick 5-minute reset. Lisa? Sir, go ahead. I should have mentioned that.
I make a recommendation to move the following to the consent agenda: the individual student waivers, minutes of the February 18, 2021 State Board meeting, minutes. Can you speak up a little bit? I'm sorry. The individual student waivers, minutes of the February 18, 2021 State Board meeting, minutes of the February 17, 2021 Executive Session meeting, the March 2021 Personnel Report, the March 2021 Legal Report, with the exception of one legal appeal being pulled for a separate vote. That's my teacher voice.
Okay, and Ms. Kenmore, thank you for keeping me on my toes. I appreciate that. All right, I think that wraps up the items. We're going to recess for here about 5 minutes so we can put the agenda together, and then we'll come back and take a vote and put the agenda. All right? Recess for 5 minutes.
was all before the figures.
Hey, look, somebody said you were in tech. She's not doing it.
We didn't say you were the turkey.
I've got 5 items on the budget committee, which
We knew all about it before the pictures ever arrived.
oh, okay, so that was that.
That's Debbie.
All right, welcome back, everybody. Before you, you should have an updated agenda, and then waiting for Tiffany. Ms. Taylor, is this posted?
We'll post them.
Okay, perfect. All right, so before you, you have a copy of the agenda, that proposed agenda as we went through the committee reports. Are there any questions? And at this point in time, the chair will entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
Motion to approve.
I have that first from the traditional Mr. Second, Mr. Donaldson. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second from Dr. Desjardins. All right, is there any comments or questions regarding the agenda? All right, hearing none, let's have a vote. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? It's unanimous. Thank you very much. Now the chair will entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Motion to approve.
I have a first from Mr. Donaldson. Is there a second?
Second.
I have a second from Ms. Zoller. Any questions, comments regarding the consent agenda? Hearing none, the chair will call for a vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? The consent agenda passes unanimously. Now we will move to Budget Committee items, and I'm going to turn this over to the Superintendent for Budget Committee item number 1. This is the PFEA grant, CARES SEA Reserve Grant for School Nurses.
See Mr. Cardoza?
Want the recommendation, sir, is that right?
Yes.
Okay. All right, it is recommended that the State Board of Education authorize the state school superintendent to award a grant to local education agencies and GNET facilities at a cost not to exceed $5,829,574 in federal funds for school nursing.
Thank you, Superintendent. Chair will entertain a motion to approve the recommendation.
Motion to approve.
First from Mr. Donaldson. Is there a second?
Second.
I'll take that from Ms. Petty. All right. Any comments or questions, discussion on this item? Mr. Royal.
Yes, I was just, wanted to just highlight this item for the great work that's going on. This is significantly needed in the CARES Act. I just wanted to ask, and I had a conversation with Mr. Cardoza before. I apologize for him being in and out some yesterday. Just how this is being allocated, the formula, because I wanted to hear on that, and he explained some of it to me, but I think it's important to some of our smaller districts and more rural districts to understand how this allocation was. And so if you can just give us a brief overview of that, Mr. Cardoza, and then have even some thoughts on this.
Sure. Thank you for the question. So on the school nursing formula, what we did was took the state school nursing formula and ran it through the total amount of money that we had, so the $5.8 million. In some cases, you'll have some of our really small school districts that came out to $600 or $700, which is not a lot of money, doesn't take them very far, doesn't even allow them to buy some of the basic school nursing supplies. So in talking with Krista Lowe, our person on staff here who works with school nurses, and talking with some of her colleagues around the district, she suggested that if we get to a $15,000 minimum, that would go a really long way for many of our districts that, again, get a small amount of money in their state grant formula. So what we did when we ran the formula is basically took 15,000 as the minimum and then rolled that up to the 5.8 through the remaining formula.
No, that's good. That's helpful because that was one of the concerns. And just, just even thinking from a public policy perspective, sometimes funding formulas that are the easiest aren't the best public policy, but I think that was a very good move from a public policy standpoint to help those districts because those are some of the ones that need it the most. And I was just really thinking about this because we've been talking about school nursing and telemedicine and these things for many years and using these Corona dollars to help these districts do a better job or provide services for some of these kids that need it the most, I think is very important. And I just wanted to highlight, one, this is something that's going on, is being done to try to help, but then even two, thinking further and how we utilize the flexible dollars. I heard you say that systems can use this for supplies and different things too. So if they already have school nurses in place, they can use them for that?
That's right. So it's pretty flexible. Just as most CARES dollars are, we have made even this grant to them pretty flexible. It needs to be under the school nursing parameters, but whatever they see that money going to the best use for, so whether that's school nurse supplies, it could be personnel, it could be contracting with staff, it could be certainly telemedicine. And we've had some districts that have said, yes, that would be great. That would be very helpful for us to be able to use these additional funds to reach kids who are at home right now. So we've left it, outside of the umbrella of school nurse, we've left it very flexible.
Okay. Well, that was the second thing I wanted to highlight, that this doesn't have to go into that they can use it. It's pretty broad. So if, I know some of our districts are quite crafty at putting things in a box, but for that. But that's why I wanted to, one, well, isn't highlighted, but I wanted to check that those two things were the case, because I heard they were, that this flexibility with this, they can use them for supply. So if they've already got the nurses in place, they could. But then if they wanted to use this money to help offset the cost of a true nurse or MA or whatever, some type of professional to help these kids, that they can do that with these
Absolutely,
dollars.
absolutely.
Well,
I'm
sorry, but even so, what's so important about this is that there are a substantial number of counties in Georgia that don't have pediatricians in the counties. And if keeping a robust school nurse program and all the parts that go with that is extremely important. I know it's something Richard worked on for a number of years because of that very reason, and especially now with the pandemic where kids are not getting to school every day, and we hope that they will be every day very soon, and in many districts they are. That interaction with a medical professional is so important.
Can I just add to that I think you put the third leg on the stool, because we have, psychologists and counselors, but this is so necessary. So this, as Martha, I did tell that, it's extremely important.
And I too am glad to see that the allocation, there was a minimum to help all school districts, especially in rural Georgia.
And even while 15,000 isn't ideal minimum, I think for everybody,
It's substantial.
in talking with our school nurses throughout the state, they said once we get to that kind of a minimum number, we're talking actual help, for supplies and being able to even be able to contract with some of the people you mentioned, Mr. Royal.
And Mr. Cardozo, again, just to kind of reiterate, I know this, comes at a good time, because I believe a lot of our nurses actually at the beginning of the pandemic actually donated supplies to help, cover some of the actions that were needed. So, they were sacrificing and giving up, their supplies to help, kind of offset some of the initial issues that we were having.
That's right. Yeah. So as you can imagine, during this time of year with the pandemic and vaccination efforts and all the things that they are involved in, supplies have been dwindling, and so these will hopefully help them with that.
Matt, I know we have been talking for at least a few years or several years about a Medicaid project in cooperation with Department of Community Health for school nurses. This is not that, is that correct? But this brings that back up in my mind, and I know it was a challenging thing. Dr. McGivney worked on it because some of us helped him tirelessly along the way. Is that still going on, or
It is, and I'm not the most qualified person to tackle that, and I'm sure we can get the information on that.
you
But I
don't,
know
you don't
it's
have to do it
still
right
going
now,
on.
but it just did bring that up, and I know that's a big project, and it is a project with a lot of potential if we can finally get it over the finish line for those federal dollars. But they're not CARES Act dollars, but they are federal dollars that I know, could be well spent, but for nurses in our schools. So.
And I would just say this, Mr. John, that was one thing that I think probably within the past month, I did ask, once we were looking at this grant, to see where the follow-up with that initiative was. So we are investigating that, because that's, I think, about $40 million a year, from my understanding. So.
Thank you.
Richard, do we have a list of the schools that don't have a nurse in them?
I'm not sure, well, I guess through our allocation, I guess QBE.
Did you say don't have one at all?
Someone who does not have a school nurse.
So it depends on whether we're saying an RN versus
Right.
LPN or a
They don't
clinical.
have a medical-
They all have
Some- yeah,
someone, of
some-
course, but.
Some source. Could
Some
we-
nurses are actually shared by schools,
Yep.
so, I don't know exactly if we designate that, or if that shows I guess we'd have to look at how we qualify that.
Could we get a breakdown potentially on that?
Yeah, we can get that information for you.
It would be very,
A generic, I guess.
We may be able to run something through CPI to see, and not sure if it'll capture all of even the volunteer clinic aides,
our school nursing folks.
but we can check.
That's to quantify it back to what we're saying with this, Matt. There's flexibility, and it doesn't necessarily have to be a nurse. I mean, some of them can be medical assistants. Some of them are parents that are retired healthcare that have a good basic knowledge that opens up a huge.
Well, that's what we were saying, if it's in the medical field at
Yeah.
any point, but.
Matt, on this 5.8, how has that total number gotten to?
That's the remaining amount in CARES 1.
Okay.
So we, each of the rounds of CARES has a state set aside. So this is the remaining amount.
That was my question. So
Okay.
that was what was left, and
That's
then
right.
backed into the formula and did that. Okay.
That's right.
Thank you. That's all the discussion I have, Mr. Chair.
All right, thank you, Mr. Royal. Are there any other questions or comments? All right, hearing none, the chair will call for a vote. This is on Budget Committee item number 1, the PFEA grant, the CARES SEA Reserve Grant for School Nurses. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries unanimously. Thank you, Mr. Cardoza. Superintendent, I'll turn this over to you for Budget Committee item number 2.
See, it is recommended that the State Board of Education authorize the state school superintendent to receive a grant from the United States Department of Education for the amount of $4,249,371,244 in federal funds for the purpose of supporting schools as they are impacted by the efforts of the COVID-19 pandemic, and allocate $3,824,434,128 to local education agencies in the manner required by law.
Thank you, Superintendent Woods. Do we have a motion to approve Budget Committee item number 2?
So moved.
I have a first from,
So moved.
It's Jeopardy, I pressed the button first.
We got a first from Stan outside.
they're all over the board. Actually, I heard Ms. Kinnemore first, and then I heard Dr. Desjardins second. So we have this on the table. Are there any comments or questions? Yes, Mr. Downey.
I just want to quickly comment that Matt provided us with a handout that you should have, which is some guidance as to the implementation plan for the use of the funds. And it provides a checklist and some of the items that it is suggested that the local school districts use the money for. And Matt, if you'd like to comment on that a little bit, elaborate on it.
Sure. So in front of you, as Mr. Downey said, you will see the use of funds form. And what this is, as we mentioned, CARES Act funding is very flexible. So we require them, they still have to budget for the funds. So they don't just get all the funds forwarded along. They have to budget for them. They then request that. We have to sign off. And so we use this form that you see in front of you to determine the allowability. CARES funds are extremely flexible. And the law itself says that on these formula funds that go to the school districts, that we can't set parameters on things that are allowable in law. So we have tried to summarize on that use of funds form for a school district that these are the things that we see in law that are allowable. Please let us know what you plan to use them for so that we can, ultimately know how the funds are being used. But, so just note that the use of funds form that we're looking at here is for their formula funds, not the grant funds like school nurses we just talked about and other things. We can put stronger parameters around those. These funds, however, are very, very, very flexible and broad.
Any other questions or comments?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, this goes, really, the next two are almost really lumped together as far as the discussion in my mind and doing that around public policy and how we're doing that. I mean, these funds are flexible in nature and need to be. You were mentioning the 15,000. You take, depends on what part of Georgia you're from, Taliaferro or Taliaferro County.
Pardon.
Not spelled that way, but it's.
You're not from around here. I'm not over there. But that kind of 15,000 for a school nurse is huge, and on here in the allocations they're getting just over $1 million. But they have different needs, and they've opened a community clinic. I mean, they've addressed. I think been very aggressive in how they're addressing it. But it's really, I've been talking to some of the folks across the street and different things about, I think this is a good start on this funds, but what are we doing to try to help them, some of them from public policy, figure out how to best use these funds? I mean, because this is a lot of money, and whether it's a lot of money or a little bit of money, though, what are we doing as a state board of education to help wrap good public policy around some of these who really aren't sure what is best to do, with these? Because, reading this, it can go from anywhere from curriculum support to mental health support to facilities and equipment to, school meals. I mean, it's all over the board.
That's right.
I mean, I think this is a really good sheet to get them thinking about what can be done. But are we doing, or have we discussed anything to do to help these districts around from the public policy perspective, saying that, look, these are places that we think could be best utilized, or we could help try to pull resources together, for instance, and do things with our discretionary funds, because what's our discretionary piece of this?
Of the CARES 3? The discretionary piece of CARES 3 is about $106 million. So I want to, to your point, what you said there, just as a reminder that we can't get into the parameters around these funds for formula ones. It's the discretionary amount that we can get into public policy around.
I guess I would disagree. We can't get into, we can't tell them, but we can help guide them. And
sure.
And that's where I'm going. I'm glad you just pointed out that differentiation, because that is not my thought or purpose at all of this state board to tell them what to do with these. But I know I've seen this movie before, and I know that there's probably some districts that haven't drawn down all their number one funds, a lot of them, and we're on number 3. Right. That's where I'm getting. Where are we? Are we as a board, which a board should do, help show vision, bring it together, come up with best practices and different things? Because we've got districts. I don't think we're going to have to help Gwinnett County spend this money. Maybe, but just saying, we've got some that have some great professional staff that they're already working ahead of the dollars, and they'll have them drawn down. But there are a lot of districts. I mean, Jason, I see Bibb's getting $100 million, and what's relevant in Bibb County is not going to be as relevant in Hancock County. I'll go to one I can pronounce. But no, where you've got a major issue, where you've got darn near 100%, if not free and reduced lunch, who may need a lot more money in meals than a Forsyth County. So I get that, but what I'm challenging is that we can, as a state and a board, help these districts adopt good policy and even bring together with our 101. All right, you want to, does this RISA need help with school nurses, mental health, and then come up with that and help lead that discussion from the top, not telling them what to do, but help sharing ideas and best practices of what to do. That's really where my thought's going on this.
Mike, let me just, I want to ask a question. And you brought up a really good point with regard to round 1, 2, and 3. I kind of look at this and this is like, I'll call it the lottery curse. You know, how many people that actually win the lottery end up, doing well. It's like they end up spending it all, and some of it irresponsibly. I'm not suggesting anybody spending money irresponsibly. So there's a point in time where we have, and we're acting like a filter largely. It's like coming to us, and then we're kind of spreading the money around, and there's tremendous discretion, as I'm hearing. Absolutely. Correct? And I guess coming up with a list of ideas, recommendations, and suggestions is that. So from a timing standpoint, are districts required to expend this money within a certain period of time?
No, they have, so unlike any other federal funds that most of them have ever seen, they have a 100% carryover. So in CARES 1, it was September 30th of 2022 with a 1-year automatic carryover to 23. I'm sorry, 21. 9/30/21 for CARES 1, automatic to 22. CARES 2 had a 9/30/22 automatic carryover to 23. And then the CARES 3 will have a 9/30/23 with an automatic carryover to 9/30/24. So they don't have a drawdown requirement the way sometimes we say by X date you have to have expended a certain amount.
All right, Ms. Zoller? Oh, I'm sorry.
I would just want to share with the board, again, as we look at this, I mean, we've already been in conversation with some districts to say, have you thought about this? Or they are asking us questions, and so we are responding with that. We are looking at, I think trying to see where our school districts are trying to prioritize, especially when we're talking about the opportunity to learn and trying to get our kids back where they're at. Creating a template where we can see what they are planning to do. I think for us, we do not want to duplicate something or to step on. I think the point being that a lot of districts do have, their own unique area. Again, I'll just say that as being, I've probably visited close to 60 schools since September, and each one is a little bit different. They do that. I think, trying to encourage them to look at their strategic plans, where their needs are, how they can see, because there is so much flexibility that we can. I'm working with staff now to say that we will have some maybe mini seminars of best practices to say, listen, this is something you may want to consider. Again, we cannot tell them what to do, but say, these are some options in this area. And I think whether it is learning, whether it's nutrition, whether it's facilities, you can maybe think about this. Is it payroll, and looking at options of how you address that. So, it is definitely a lot of money. We are trying to, be cognizant of that. I mean, you do have, like some of our larger school districts, they have, great humongous staff to do this. Some of our small districts don't have very many people. So we're out there, trying to support, them, looking at whether it's, formative assessments and things of this nature. So, we are working to provide them. I think there again, it's just trying to make sure we keep that, those guardrails that separate us, but, letting people know that these are some options that you have, and if you want to. But as I said, I know we continuously get, in fact, I think Mr. Cardozo and I had a conversation yesterday about what was taking place, and, people are asking just to make sure. Again, I think there is some hesitancy just because you're dealing with federal dollars, and you don't want the audit to come back and then all of a sudden say, oh, you couldn't do X, and, because that causes, some angst. But, and we're just trying to make sure, because I know we have been in discussions with the new administration about how they foresee the use of this new money and what that looks like as well.
Mr. Chair, yesterday morning, breakfast with the governor, it's very relevant to kind of what Mike said about guidelines, I think, and we're talking about making some guidelines where everybody doesn't and not putting words in his mouth by any means, but I mean, you know, you don't want to see it all. Everybody's got brand new football uniforms, et cetera, and not go to the proper sources. So I think it would behoove us to get with the governor's staff or whoever it might be to help get some type of guidelines, because that's what he was reiterating, the same thing, that we want to make sure we give them some type of, we're not going to put parameters on them, but yet, as I say, this would be a good focus for you. Is there a way we could reach out to the schools and say, you know,
Well, again, I think one of the things we hope to do is provide, you know, like I said, whether it's webinars, whether it's, you know, written guidance as well, to say, have you considered this, or this is the parameters of which you can use that. And again, we will be taking an inventory from our district to see, especially in the area, how they plan to use some of the money to, I guess, recoup some of the learning, and what that looks like. And at that point, that will help us in our, you know, what we can do as far as discretionary, working with the governor's office on that, as well, to say what are the gaps that we foresee in the future to help, you know, support this. Also, I think, again, as I've mentioned, trying to put out what are best practices up there. And I think in best practices, whether it is, you know, for academics, again, to mention whether it's school nursing, whether it's a medical, you know, mental needs, you know, social needs that are out there that we perhaps can do. It could be, you know, maybe you need to buy X computers, or maybe you need to upgrade some of your stuff. Looking at the connectivity issues that are out there throughout the state. So I mean, there are things there. I mean, again, depending where you're at, that looks a little bit different. And that's where I think that once we get a sense of where people are going, then we can help support and close the gaps. And I think our response, you know, again, not necessarily trying to be sandbox, but being flexible as well, so that we can, again, serve our districts in the best way that we possibly can, but also provide them with the best information that we possibly can, so they can make those decisions. And I think that is a combination. I know we're, you know, going to be working with teaching and learning and school improvement to help, you know, facilitate that. But, you know, I think across the division as well.
Superintendent, I totally agree, and these are some of the points we made during breakfast yesterday, but the funds are so unencumbered that I'm sure that almost all of them are going to be used for the best purpose. But we ought to be giving guidance, as you said, best practices nationally. I mean, looking beyond even what's going on in Georgia to what really works to bring students back to where we know they need to be after an awful year. And so if there is some random situation where money's spent on athletic turf or a field house, and we trust nobody would do that, but we know that somebody will, or somebody could, then we have at least offered the guidance that this is how. These are some great examples of how the money should be spent, and this is really what needs to happen. And then, as you say, we don't have control, but we do have influence, and I think we ought to use it to just as you're saying to every degree we can.
Right. I'm just saying, we're again just trying to inform people.
Sure.
I mean, different school systems have different capabilities. And again, we're here to support and serve these folks, and I think it's important to see what they're doing so that we don't try to double step on things, and I think that would, you know, put us in a position to be less efficient with the resources that are out there. But to your point, it's a lot of money. Like I said, my checkbook does not look like that.
Matt.
So,
A lot of unencumbered money.
Matt, yes.
Matt, just a minute. I'm going to recognize Ms. Zeller, who's been patiently waiting here for a comment.
So I certainly support 100% this starting at the school system. And I think this direction you've given them is that sort of parameter that lets them know what's allowed and what's not allowed. But I think the bigger picture we're missing, and it's not just about the school board, it's about all this money that's been allocated in 1, 2, and 3, is that there's lots of, quote, leftover money out there. It doesn't matter whether it's in education or it's with PPP or it's with other things. And so I think we're going to have to be proactive to look at this as it goes on, and if there's a pot of money, and I hate to even use that term, but if there's a pot of money that's not getting used, we have to work with our legislators and other people to reallocate that to the places that we need it, Although you're right, it's like it's like the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. And I'm glad that they were generous, but at the same time, I think we start with the local school systems, but I think there's going to be a job for us a year, 2 years down the road where there's going to be these pots of money that we've got to figure out how to be accountable for them.
Now, Matt, now you may kind of, now, if school districts do not use this money, I think it goes back to,
Yeah, this, by law,
Yeah.
the formula money has to go to them. We don't have, that's not a
Right,
pot
absolutely.
that's out there. And so, depending on which of the cares I mentioned, it has that timeframe.
But it's a pretty wide time frame.
Oh, very wide
Yeah,
timeframe.
so it could be sitting
Which
there,
is part
yeah.
of why you might not see, some of the drawdowns immediately. And there are some of them that you may not see the drawdown as being a large percentage, but they've encumbered them.
Right.
So they plan to pay payroll, 6 months from now or whatever it may be, because some of them, before CARES 2 and CARES 3 in particular, were holding on to this for that rainy day fund, not knowing what the economy was going to look like and that kind of thing. If I can go back to what I should have started with probably is we provide a tremendous amount of technical assistance. We have federal program staff who are so helpful. So we're talking with school districts every day about allowability. Have you thought about using it for this? That's not the best use. We absolutely will not be saying yes to things like football uniforms and the guidelines part, while it's not, while it is very, very broad also, that use of funds form is really our guidelines to not step into that territory of we're telling you what you can't spend it on, but trying to give you guidance on what is allowable under law. So it's a balance, but we're doing a lot of technical assistance. Again, I can't say enough about the federal program staff and who all talking with districts every day about allowability questions. And to the point about US Ed and monitoring is, every time I ask them a question, so many times the response back is it reasonable and necessary to prevent, prepare for, and plan for COVID? Yes. So that's their answer many times to it. So you can see the flexibility even from their end.
All right. Matt?
Matt, I've gotten several calls and a few questions at our RESA meeting about the allocations. And people seem to have a misconception because we get the money, we decide where it goes. So can you give us a very brief explanation of how the money is distributed and that we do not have any flexibility on the allocations?
Sure. So for the 90% part that has to go directly to school districts, we have no discretion over that. That is a Title I proportion amount, and that's written in the law itself. So if X county or school district gets 0.5% of our most recent Title I allocation, then that school district is going to get 0.5% of CARES 1, 2, and 3. So it's the same allocation. We have no discretion over how that money goes out to them. The only part we have the discretion over is that state reserve part.
Thank you.
Matt, I had a question too. Is this, the money that's coming to us from the federal government for this provision, is that within the state and local government allocation coming from the federal government, or do you know?
It's from US Ed, so my guess is no, it's not. It's it's called its technical term is the emergency secondary, and it's ESSER.
ESSER.
I'll get you that, which is a separate fund from even GEAR funds and all the other CRF funds, all those state and local funds. So it's a different pot.
And the reason I'm saying that is on a per capita basis on the state and local funding, Georgia ranked, I think, 50th out of 51.
Right.
And 50th being like the bottom of the pack with the per capita allocation. So I don't know where we are relative to other states.
Yeah, so that would not have any impact on these funds because this was run based on that Title I proportionality the same way as the CARES 1 and CARES 2.
Got it. All right. Any other
This is what I was hoping to have with this is learn what we are doing now and see what we can do better. Because one, seen this movie too, is I know I've been on a budget and audit committee where the feds came back with tremendous flexibility from previous and said, no, this district didn't send it. And you, the LEA, i.e. the state of Georgia, are responsible for paying.
Mm-hmm.
That was not, those conversations with the budget and financial staff, FBO, across the street were not very fun. on why Georgia's writing a check back to the federal government with several commas in it. So that guide, you said, you used the word assistance, and we do, but there's a difference between assistance and leadership on showing what can be best and what can be done with this. And that's really where I wish we could help go, because it is going to break my heart if a lot of these funds do not go towards really identifying what the learning loss has been on these students and helping, one, identify it, but then two, being used to get them back to grade level.
Yeah. Could I say one thing about that now that's different from CARES 1 and CARES 2, where it was just complete, the 10%, or I'm sorry, the 90% went to school districts, and then the use of funds form, you see, if it fell under that, it was generally allowable. CARES 3, U.S. Department of Education has specified some usage. So school districts have to take, so of these allocations that you're going to vote on, they have to take 20% of that specifically for learning loss. So in this case, there's going to be a little more scrutiny over exactly how they can use those funds, particularly for learning loss. Where CARES 1 and CARES 2 could be used for learning loss, this round is going to specify 20%.
Well, again, glad we're having this conversation, because these are things that I wouldn't have known, and maybe some districts. I mean, you're communicating with it. I know they're getting a lot better information than we are. But then as a state, we already have some great pilot programs out there with GMAP and NAVI that we already know do a great job on this. So you just threw me a softball, Matt. No, because
Great job, Matt.
To some of our new members, you weren't here for the discussions, and when the bills came out of the legislature that said the state board shall provide and come up with a consortium or a pilot program on this very topic. And we've already done a lot. We, the state and the board, have already done a lot of legwork, and we've got pilots. And one of the items on here is $500,000 to those two pilots that we just put on consent agenda. For those of you that aren't in budget and don't know, they even allocated specifically, the legislature did, $500,000 that you're about to vote on the consent agenda, or we already did, to GMAP and NAVI. Those consortiums that are directly, so where I'm getting at is, and this will be, I know we're having our retreat coming up, and I'll stop, but talking about that and how we can provide leadership as the state on best practices. District, you don't have to go figure out how to spend this $20,000. If you're not a member of this consortium enough, join one of these, show them what they can do, and they can use their 20% on that for that. You're already plug and play. Your peers are doing it, and they're having these results.
Mike, you're echoing something that Vice Chair Downey shared with me.
I literally just passed a note about 10 minutes ago when this conversation began to Chairman Sweeney that with the retreat coming up next month, this would be a great opportunity to put something like this on the agenda so we can discuss and come up with some ideas and some guidance to the local school districts. And so we will put that on the agenda. We're putting that together now and have that a more specific discussion. And it will give us some time to see a little bit, because these funds are going to hit immediately, right? I mean, they're being dispersed.
Pretty quickly. We have there's some accounting things that have to happen, of course.
The districts are going to start spending the money, obviously. We'll have a couple, 3 weeks that we'll be able to see what they're starting to do, what projects. Maybe their local school boards will have met and started looking at how they're going to spend the money, and we'll have some ideas of what some of the districts are looking at that point. So.
Okay, let's stop.
I've got Matt, when do the mayors from the different cities get their CARES fund? Because that's coming in on 3/2, right?
So our money went to the state, or it's going to the state, and then they have 60 days to determine when exactly the logistics of it, and also there hasn't been clear guidance for us on what we can spend the money for. So it's all up in the air.
Okay.
We don't know for sure.
But yeah,
So DOE is ahead. Yeah.
But there was conversation about maybe putting in broadband.
Yep.
My mayor talked about that. So here again is another entity here that if that district.
Especially kids that are having to school from home
Right.
in rural Georgia who don't have access to internet. So I hope, as the governor said, it'd be transformative money. So I hope they'll use it long-term.
All right. I don't know if anybody has any other comments. I think we can go ahead and take action on this. So hearing none, let's go ahead. All those in favor of Budget Committee item number 2, the PFEA grant, the American Rescue Plan ARP Act, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Carries unanimously. And then we'll move on to Budget Committee item number 3, the PFEA grant, Coronavirus Response and Relief Supplemental Appropriations Act, and the Educator bonuses.
It is recommended that the State Board of Education authorize the state school superintendent to award a grant to local education agencies and GNET's facilities at the cost not to exceed $230,558,826.65 in federal funds for a $1,000 retention bonus for educators.
Thank you, Superintendent Woods. Chair will entertain a motion to approve the agenda item, Budget Committee item number 3.
Motion to approve.
I have a first from Mr. Downey, a second from Mr. Donaldson. Is there any comments, questions, or concerns?
Well, I would just say for me, I know this was something that, that we kind of led the way with that. I think in traveling around and visiting people, I feel that this was the right thing to do for our educators and I would say our education staff. I mean, it's not just teachers, but bus drivers, nutrition folks. They have worked above and beyond. The hours that go in, I think custodial staff, if you're in and been in the schools, this has been a tireless effort to keep schools going. A lot of our teachers, what you find out is that they not only teach face-to-face, but also they teach remotely. And I think with these individuals, it basically is doubling preps. For all our teachers, when we had this pandemic hit, and again with virtual education being the norm to start off with, and continuing on throughout the state, it was like everybody became a first-year teacher all over again. And I think that if you've ever been and lived through that experience, that's a lot of challenge. And I think for us across the state, I appreciate the governor. We are probably actually have been in very good shape. On average, probably I would say that we have been probably 70% of our students have been face-to-face. As I go out, I was at one school this week, and I mean, they were 99% back face-to-face. So again, you can see that a lot of things definitely have been able to change and open up. And, trying to, show our appreciation to these folks, and again, looking at teacher retention and just retention in general, because it has been a lot of pressure on these folks. A lot of things they've had to work with. I think, we talk about the mental health aspect, an impact on students and what is going on there, but, our educational family definitely has felt that as well. And so, like that, I'm definitely in full support of this. I think it is something that, I'm pleased that the governor mentioned in the state of the state and with his support as well. I think it definitely was the right thing to do, for our education family.
I just want to be clear to understand, they built it up, school systems built it up based on, and then they submitted to you what they needed to be able to meet this, right?
No, I mean, this came out of our discretionary fund with
Right.
that. We ran figures and stuff like that. I think trying to make sure that it would be a meaningful amount to individuals that would have an impact. So again, we basically ran the numbers and saw who, could fall in that category. We've let the districts know that these would be the people that would fall underneath that. They have no, again, this coming from our fund, this goes strictly for this $1,000 bonus. There is nothing that nobody can take away from that. They cannot deviate these resources, but it will go to the people that it's intended to go to.
If we'll take a moment of silence, I believe we could actually hear thousands of teachers and educators and administrators saying thank you, because I already got 2 texts already. So.
When will that money flow down to the local LEAs?
Let's see, Mr. Cardoza, I think you might have more of that information.
As soon as a couple of the accounting things I mentioned on CARES 3 in general happens, all that money will be loaded into their consolidated application. They can
So
start
we'll
drawing
be
it
free to
down.
tell them it's on the way, but it's not in the mail.
That's right. And to be clear, how this will work is it won't come as a check from the state. It will come as a grant to the local school districts the way all the other CARES grants do. But in this case, it will come with parameters, just like the school nursing one will, to say, this is for $1,000 bonus for these people. We have an application. Our IT folks have done a great job. We have an application that will tell them by name exactly who qualified based on job classification. So they won't have to figure out exactly who it applies to. So it will be quick.
The district won't be able to say, we got to figure it out. They already have name, rank, and serial number of everybody it goes to.
That's right.
After we approve it, I'm going to refer all calls of when to you, Matt. So.
Thank you. I can't wait.
All right, any other?
I think I heard him throw an OPB under the bus.
All right, are there any other further comments or questions? All right, hearing none, Chair will call for a vote. This is on budget item committee, item number 3. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Carries unanimously. And we'll move on to the fourth and final budget committee item, which is agenda item number 4, the PFEA grant, emergency assistance to non-public schools.
It is recommended that the State Board of Education authorize the state school superintendent to receive a grant from the United States Department of Education in the amount of $79,175,146 in federal funds for the purpose of supporting non-public schools as they are dealing with the efforts of COVID-19 pandemic.
Thank you. Chair will entertain a motion to approve the agenda item, budget committee item number 4. I have a first from Ms. Kennemore. Second from Mr. Donaldson. Any questions, comments, concerns? Hearing no discussion, Chair will call for a vote. Please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion carries unanimously. Thank you very much. We'll now move on to Rules Committee items. The first item being the TL Standards Revision, K-12 Health Standards of Excellence, and the adoption. Superintendent Woods.
It is recommended that the State Board of Education adopt the Georgia Standards of Excellence for Health Education, which will subsequently be added to the state-funded list of K-8 subjects and 912 courses.
Thank you, Superintendent Woods. Chair will entertain a motion to approve Rules Committee item number 1.
Motion to approve.
I have a first from Mr. Donaldson. Is there a second?
Second.
I have a second from Ms. Kennemore. Any questions, comments, or discussion?
I want to thank especially some of our board members, Helen and Lisa and others, also for the hard work they did to put in, and the department for the hard work that went into these standards, improving the original versions and making them, I think, something that we can be proud of.
Very much so. Any other comments or questions?
I think that goes to the teachers and the groups that worked on it, because that's where the rubber met the road, and so.
Right. Okay. Hearing no further comments or questions, Chair will entertain a vote. All those in favor of Rules Committee item number 1, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, this item carries unanimously. We'll move on to Rules Committee item 2, AA State Board Rule 160-3-1-.07 Testing Programs Student Assessment Adoption.
It is recommended that the State Board of Education adopt the amendment to State Board of Education Rule 160-3-1-.07 Testing Programs Student Assessment.
Thank you, Superintendent Woods. Chair will entertain a motion to approve.
Motion to approve.
First from Mr. Donaldson. Is there a second?
Second.
I have a second from Ms. Petty. Is there any comments, questions, or discussion? Mr. Long, are you raising your hand to speak?
He was stretching as well, Chairman.
Okay. Thank you very much. Hearing none.
I'll freak out like that.
All right. Chair will entertain entertain the vote for Rules Committee item number 2. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? The motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Now we'll move on to Rules Committee item number 3, TL State Board Rule 160-4-2.34, the dual enrollment adoption.
It is recommended the State Board of Education adopt the amendment of State Board of Education Rule 160-4-2-.34, dual enrollment.
Thank you, Superintendent Woods. Chair will entertain a motion to approve Rules Committee item number 3.
Motion to approve.
I have the first from Mr. Donaldson. A second?
Second.
Second from Mr. Downey. Any comments, questions, concerns? Hearing none, Chair will entertain a vote for Rules Committee item number 3. All those in favor of this item signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion carries unanimously. Move on to Rules Committee item number 4, the TL State Board Rule 160-4-2.32, the Student Support Team.
It is recommended that the State Board of Education adopt the amendments to the State Board of Education Rule 160-4-2.32, Student Support Team.
Thank you, Superintendent Woods. Is there a motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
I have a motion to approve. I have a first. We have a second. I have a second. Any comments, questions, discussion?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chair. Based on what we've heard this morning and the need for clarification, both in descriptions and definitions and also the implementation process, I would like to enter a motion to table this until the May meeting.
Okay. So
That would give the time for Caitlin and her team and the other resources that we've afforded you, et cetera, to get cleared up.
So this is a motion to postpone to a time certain. Okay, this is not a debatable motion. It calls for a vote. It does have to be second. Okay, we have a second from Mr. Downey. And a third. Okay, Chair will call for a vote. So the motion is to table this to a time certain, being the May meeting, and so forth. All right, all those in favor of the motion, does everybody understand the motion, first of all?
Repeat the motion, please.
Okay, what you're voting on is a motion to table Rules Committee item number 4 to a time certain, being the May meeting of the State Board of Education. And so if we vote to approve this, this will then be deferred to the May meeting. Okay, any questions? All right, all those in favor of the motion to table to a time certain, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, hearing none, the motion is tabled and will be carried to the May meeting. All right, we'll move on to executive committee items. Ms. Kinnemore, I'll turn this over to you.
It is recommended that the State Board of Education reverse in part and remand in part the decision of the local board in the case number 2021-04 and 2021-05.
Thank you very much. Chair will entertain a motion to approve the item as presented by Ms. Kinnemore.
Motion to approve.
The first from Mr. Donaldson. Is there a second?
Second.
A second from Ms. Zoller. All those is there any comments, questions, discussion? Hearing none, Chair will entertain the vote for Executive Committee item number 1, individual legal case 2021-04. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. I do not believe we have any other business items. Okay, correct? And we already passed the executive committee items through the consent agenda, and then we would turn this over now to superintendent's report.
Again, just one item that I'll bring up. I think it really came out of a question yesterday as far as what is the department doing to, I guess, really address accountability and efficiency in the workplace since we have, moved to a more virtual, setting throughout. Of course, as I've shared within the past week or yesterday, we will be doing some remodeling up here, and so that will take up a good portion of the time between now and until our May meeting. But one of the things, we look at, and as I've shared with the staff, as we have adjusted, I said we cannot lose our efficiency and effectiveness as a department. As we look at this, and again, speaking with my deputies, what we are able to do is monitor email traffic, so our communications between our managers and groups, between our districts and the people we serve, and phone traffic as well. And I think that, that again allows us to follow up and monitor, the duties and responsibilities, and that we are meeting those. I have, spoken with the deputies and members in leadership And throughout and unequivocally, each individual has said that the efficiency of our workforce definitely has gone up. I think one of the things we've looked at, our ability to hire throughout the state has opened us up. I do not see this really changing since, as we are looking to adjust. As mentioned, we have, I think, given up about 4 of our floors here that we had. We are repurposing a lot of our rooms for, team meetings and things of this nature. We'll continue to have our virtual meetings, and we will be bringing groups in and our staff in, as needed based on leadership. But they have felt that, really the issue we've had is just asking people to kind of disconnect and not overwork, as they move forward. As I, talk and as I travel out, maybe more anecdotal information, I ask people every time I go out to our schools, are we serving you? Are we meeting your needs? And without exception, every school I've been in has said, you are doing everything we're doing. Your people are responding. They are, reaching out to us. And so, on that end, I think, listening to our customer base, we have definitely done a wonderful job, and I want to commend everybody at the DOE for that. Because that being said, at the end of the day, what I've shared with leadership, I said this will only work if we maintain our efficiency. If I see that drop, then we will reevaluate what we do. Because we have, I think, worked real hard over these past 6 years to establish that relationship with our school districts and those that we serve. As I, kind of shared with people, customer service, we're only as good as our name and our actions, and we want to make sure we maintain that. And looking at the efficiency, I think that, definitely as we looked and over the past year, we have continued to evaluate, our best practices. What does it look like? And how can we continue to improve? I think as with all districts, what I'm hearing is that some things that they are doing, they will keep. And they will look at expanding because it is what is right. And I think for us, this is, a good change. I think that when I've looked at business and industry, I see, a lot of this model taking place, but for us in government as well, just in, discontinuing the use of 4 floors, that's about $1 million savings each year for us. And again, for every state dollar, I think we can be, mindful of the people and respectful of their tax dollars and use it more efficiently. But I think that as we have looked at, we definitely come in, and I feel that we are a much more efficient organization than we were a year ago. And, so that commitment will continue. Hopefully that will address, some of the things that we're doing, but I feel like we're in a good spot with that. But, as I shared, that was always conditional with my staff that we will not lose, our ability to do the job, as effectively as we possibly can. Okay, Mr. Chair?
All right. Thank you, Superintendent.
Can I ask Superintendent, thank you for clarifying what we discussed yesterday on that. With the increased efficiency of using Zoom, Skype, all the rest of the things we're doing, except for those people who don't know how to mute themselves. Can we reconsider, since you have a more limited staff that has to come to a staff meeting, possibly moving the state board meeting around the state to be more transparent and inclusive of the communities that we serve instead of coming to the top of the tower every time? It just was something we talked about a couple of years ago because there were so many staff members had to be mobile then at that time. Mm-hmm. But because of the abilities to do what we do now, to me, it would be great for a Talifero County, whatever he just said.
Oliver.
My point being is that I think it would be receptive to those folks to have that. If it's something we look at, I don't know if the rules are prohibiting that or the fact that we can move it
years ago to allow this.
Yeah, you can.
The law specifically allows for it.
Well, it's just something because we could do it now because of the limitations of staff, and it would be nice to have it put in other areas. To me, that's just an idea.
Again, I'd like to. We're at your pleasure. So if you want to have a meeting, then we can do it. I think that one thing we just have to look at is the internet capability and of locations to make sure that that service area can accommodate what we need. And again, since we're broadcasting as well, for public, so that would be the only thing that I would guess the board may have to consider.
the same thing like on retreats, it'd be to me a board member responsibility to go out, acquire location, et cetera, or at least be assistive with a staff member up here to get it going. But anyway, just an idea. I thought I'd throw it out there.
Yeah, well, again, to your point, I think our RESAs are pretty well able to handle that. A lot of our schools as well, I mean, have great technology and stuff, so, you know, that would just be the only thing that I would think you'd want to
It just
consider.
throws another springboard in there, so that would also give a lot of other board members the opportunity to see what other school systems and other areas are like, because we are all different. We are all demographically and geographically different. So I think it'd be great if we had that opportunity to move this around. And again, I think your buy-in from the public and the local education people would be so much better, even if we toured a school every time we went. Just saying.
Just for note, that's something that you guys do decide you want to do. You never look at your bylaws, because I think your bylaws do state that they have to be here at the state capital at the DOE. So, just maybe something you want to look at. I'm sorry, I'm saying that's a change you guys wanted to make. You may want to look at your bylaws. So your bylaws do state that they have to be here. So you just may want to look at that.
Why don't we change that? But
Okay. Well, we can double check that, just clarification.
I thought it was changed.
I have to take a look at that.
Yeah.
And I know that when it comes to a body like this, you have an ability to suspend the rules. And I'm referring like to Robert's rules, for example. So we'll have to take a look at that. Thank you very much, Ms. Taylor, for pointing that out. Any other comments? Okay. Any other questions or comments for Superintendent Woods? All right, hearing none. Mr. Donaldson, I'm going to move on to the chair's report, and I believe Mr. Donaldson has something to offer.
Yes. So one of my teachers in the 12th wrote a book about the year we stayed home, about COVID. And she asked that I bring it to the board meeting and present it to Superintendent Woods with some comments. Superintendent Woods, thank you so much for your support throughout this most unusual year. On behalf of the educators in this great state, we want you to know that the work you do for all of us and our students does not go unrecognized. May God continue to bless your family and you. Sincerely, Dina Walden, teacher at Twin City Elementary. P.S. A big thanks for the planned bonus, so we can put planned out. I just want to give this to you. Yeah, bonus, whenever Matt will release the money. So.
All right, thank you very much, Matt. I really didn't have much, with the exception I just wanted to provide a quick update on the retreat. So we're locked in for the dates. It'll be Sunday, April 25th as the arrivals. Jerry from the superintendent's office and I have been coordinating as far as hotels, so expect to hear about reservations opportunities. I want to thank Mr. Johnson for touring the facility with me. We will be hosting our meetings at the Cobb Innovation and Technology Academy. They are graciously hosting us, and they will have a full complement and a highly, highly, highly professional audiovisual team to support us, led by John Stafford there. And we will take in tours of the Cobb Innovation and Technology Academy, as well as the Marietta College and Career Academy. We're working on the agenda. Please stay tuned for further details. Mr. Downey, Mr. Royal, with regard to those parameters, I think we'll go ahead and get that included on the agenda. With regard to testing, I anticipate that we'll have some testing discussions as well, among other things. If you have ideas or suggestions that you would like to include, we're going to have a full 2 days, so plan on that, and look forward to seeing everybody. But we'll have information and agenda to you shortly. And also want to announce and confirm that Dr. Alvin Wilbanks will be our keynote speaker. Okay, so looking forward to hear from Dr. Wilbanks, and I can't think of a more highly recognized, incredible superintendent, arguably one of the best superintendents within the entire country, that is in his role, and I think we're honored to be able to hear from him and the great wisdom that he has imparted in Gwinnett County.
I was going to ask at the end of the meeting before we adjourn, Mr. Chairman, for a point of when you're done, for a point of personal privilege to address that situation. So
my comments are completed, and with that, I'll turn this over to Mr. Royal.
One thing real quick, back to even just a point of order that was brought up. Ms. Taylor is right. 32-A does say we have to meet here. I'm fairly certain Title 20 doesn't specify that, but our bylaws do, so we probably need to look at that 32-A. But on to Gwinnett County, my home, my lifelong home, and the district that several of us represent, but it's the heart of my district. I'm just gonna say it, I am truly saddened by the actions taken by our board.
You're referring to the Gwinnett board.
Yes, I'm sorry, to ours, as a taxpayer, as a lifelong resident, as a father of two. My wife and I are graduates of Gwinnett County Public Schools. I have two daughters that are graduates of Gwinnett County Public Schools, and I have a daughter in high school in Gwinnett County Public Schools. Gwinnett County Public Schools has been a model of how to run effectively, but most importantly, I think in our role, how to guarantee and provide education for all kids. Gwinnett has been a model around the country on how to do that, how to effectively say every child has the ability to learn, and we're not going to accept any daggum excuses on it, and we're going to find out how to deliver education to those children. It has been the model that our state teacher, our teacher training model was adopted after. It was modeled after Gwinnett County. And I'm not going to say too much because I don't know if things will be coming to us, the State Board of Education, that I may have to vote on. And I don't want to prejudice anything that may or may not come. I'm not saying anything will, but it may or may not. That I may have to vote on something potentially down the line. But I am extremely proud of what I have learned in my 11 years on this board. I have learned so much about leadership from Alvin Wilbanks, it's not funny. I know he's had to break some china along the way, and there's some people glad to see him go, but I am saddened that he was not able to work out his contract. And it's a sad day for me, and I think a sad day for Gwinnett County. And that's
Mr. Royal, I think it's a sad day for all of Georgia. I've known Mr. Wilbanks since the early 80s and have worked side by side with him on different projects. He's spoken to a couple of groups at my request, and I've never known a more professional, respected, just top of the line, who lived and breathed education and doing right for his school district and his county and his community. And that's indication of what's going on all over our country right now with superintendents who are out there on the firing line and getting terminated for all the wrong reasons, not the right reasons. They let the mediocre slide, and it seems that the high quality, the doers, the movers, the shakers are the ones that wind up getting in trouble with their boards who want to micromanage.
Butch, I feel the same way. I've known him, when I came on this board, knew him before. I had one of our board retreats, Gwinnett County, and I'm sad too, Mike. Just want to say that. May I also say something too? And I don't know if we did it last month. I can't remember because, did we ever thank Steve Dollinger for his, oh, is my mic on?
Yeah, can't hear you.
Did we ever thank Steve Dollinger? I was on the selection committee to find someone to replace Steve Dollinger, who was with GPEE, Georgia Part. And, of course, you know that he's retiring, and Dana Buckman has taken his place. But I just want to say a thank you to him for his years and years of work that he did. And if you didn't go on one of his bus tours, you missed out on something. But we're going to miss him. I think we're in good hands, too. But as Butch was saying too, we need to give accolades to people who've worked hard and done, and was there for all the right reasons.
I just want to say here to Mr. Royal's comments and Dr. Mosley's and Helen's as well. Both of these two men have mentored me for many years, and they've mentored hundreds of others. And while Dr. Dollinger was able to retire on his own terms, I'm really saddened that Mr. Wilbanks was not. And But I'm glad we're going to get to hear from him in April at the retreat. So I thank you for doing that, and I just want to go on record as saying what a difference he's made in the lives of thousands of school leaders and district leaders in this state and this country.
Dr. Wilbanks has touched so many lives, and I believe Gwinnett, am I correct, 13th largest school system in the country. I think their FTE is over 180,000 students. You know, anybody that has any idea about what a challenging position a superintendent has, you are trying to satisfy so many different constituents. And for one individual to have the legacy that he did, more than 20 years in a superintendency position, that is critically, you know, superintendents, I think the average tenure is like 2.7 years.
It's under 3 years.
Yeah. And for him to have that kind of staying power, and I had the pleasure of serving with Alan. We have a friend here from Nelson Mullins, but I had the pleasure of serving with Alvin with the Georgia Education Committee. I served as the president of that group, and his insight was spot on. Anytime there was I'd call it a very, very challenging issue, his ability to really break it down into very simple, understandable, meaningful steps, and then pragmatically walk through that was a testament to his experience, a testament to his brain trust up here, and his legacy. And like each of us have expressed here, I'm sad to see him go. But I am honored that he will join us and be making comments to the State Board of Education during our retreat. Right.
One more quick thing. I want to thank Tina and Sherry and for today. And they brought this for every board member to take back to your school systems. I think there is, and Richard, you might be, they already have the handbook that we worked on, the dyslexic. Is it online in the schools, or is it just that one handbook, that dyslexic handbook at the school?
I mean, the ones that are on the pilot, I think it definitely have the access. I don't know if,
The handbook is listed online. I mean, it's available online. There's a dyslexia page, if you go to it, that includes the tools, sorry, that I had this on. That includes the tools and the resources as we're going through the process for dyslexia. So the handbook is available online. There were some print copies that had gone out originally when the handbook was originally finished, but the online version will, as it gets updated.
But all the schools have a hard copy.
They should have a hard copy.
or at least they have the access to it.
Well, just take this home to your system. Thank you again.
Okay. Well,
I'll just say one last thing. I promised my friend, Mayor Lester Miller, that I would give a shout out to Macon because we have the Cherry Blossom Festival going on. I wore a pink tie yesterday.
Yeah.
I wore a pink tie again today. It finishes up this weekend. They had to cancel it last year. That was right as the pandemic was beginning. They've been having a very good turnout. The Arts and Crafts Festival's this weekend. If you have some time, go down. The trees are blooming. It's beautiful. And so I promised him I would do that, and so there you go.
thank you very much. And I apologize, I forgot you were going to mention that. Thank you very much. All right, I think that wraps us up for today. So with that, the Chair will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to approve.
I have a first from Mr. Long. Is there a second?
Second.
All right, all those in favor of the motion, if there's no questions or comments or discussion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. That was a very, very robust aye. Is there anybody opposed? Hearing none, we are adjourned. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.